let's just log us in quickly. So you log in with an existing Google account. There is no sign-up process at all, so very, very simple to start using. When you logged in, you get a simple check now button, and then we can upload the paper that we want to upload. So let me just find our paper for today. Okay, so as I said, this will be our demo paper that will be on the site. Will replace the one that's there currently. So this is an APA 7 paper, but if you were uploading one yourself, you could choose from the options here. We have basically APA 7th and 6th, and we also do a kind of a minimal Harvard version. We're hoping to add more styles later on, but at the moment, that's what we offer, and those are thoroughly tested. Okay, if we hit check, we should see that things are super, super quick. So that's gone through literally in a couple of seconds. I've not done any jiggery pokery to make that fast. That's how quick Recite is. Recite solves the problem that many academics face. When checking their work and that of others, it checks that your citations match with your references at the end of your work, and it highlights discrepancies. Recite also points out other stylistic issues, enables you to gain further insight around your referencing, and even alerts you to retracted sources. When you load up in a paper into Recite, as I've just done, you get the results page that you'll see now. What we do is we break things down into 3 sections. So you actually have your in-text citations, your reference list, and the annotated article. The numbers at the top basically just are summaries. So in this article, we have detected 107 citations, of which 15 have possible issues, 133 references in the reference list, of which there are 26 that have potential issues. We expand the sections just by clicking them and contract them the same. So basically we show quite a different view on your paper than what you would normally see, which actually turns out to be quite useful. In terms of using Recite, we actually recommend that you have Recite open side by side with the paper that you're uploading. That allows you to make edits as you're looking at the advice that Recite gives you. You then make those corrections, you save, and you re-upload to check that you've made those corrections correctly and that Recite hasn't got any further advice. Recite isn't designed to be a one-time check. So the idea is that you use it iteratively, you make changes and you re-upload. Recite gives you new advice, and then you go through that process over and over again until you get to a point where you're happy that nothing else needs adjusting. It's important to point out that we don't make corrections for you, and I've always felt this is the right approach, as it makes the user correct the mistakes themselves and learn from that experience. Hopefully they'll make less mistakes next time too. This also means that a scholar is less reliant on a tool to fix their work and is instead learning how to do it themselves. It seems a little upside down, but it's generally better to start with the reference list section, then move on to the citations. As kind of a more accurate reference list section means that Recite has more knowledge about your references correctly, such that it can give you better advice regarding the citations. So I'd always recommend doing it that way around. So let's just dive in and have a look at those. At the top of each of the sections, the top 2 sections anyway, we have some options, which I'll explain a bit further in a bit, but let's jump straight into the actual results here. It's probably worth pointing out, first of all, we have these found in document and not found in document. These are basically just saying that was Recite able to find usage of that reference within your work. So obviously it's really important to make sure you don't have references in your list aren't actually cited at all. Does happen quite a bit, because obviously you might think, oh, I'm gonna say something about that one, and then you come back to it and in an edit it might get removed, and then you forget to remove it from your reference list. So it can be really helpful for picking those up. So where you have found in document, it has a number next to it which says how many times it has been cited, and not found in document would say it's not found. If we find a match in your document that we think might be a match to it, you'll get +1 possible matches or whatever, and you can click on those to see the possible citation that matches it. If we move on down slightly, we'll see these arrows next to certain references. These are actual alphabetical order indicators. So this is basically saying that some of your references here are out of order. So we've got a block here, and we've got a block there, and some more further down. This one here is saying down one, down one, down one. This one is saying up three. So essentially, Recite is telling you that to get your ordering correct according to APA 7, this entry needs to move up three, so it would move above the Anders reference, and the others would naturally move down. So all we need to do is move this one up, and the others would all move down, and we'd correct that block. We have a summary of the alphabetical order issues at the top. So you can see that we have alphabetical order issues 14 at the top, and you can actually click that message if you like, just to see the suggested order that Recite is telling you. So then you click it again to move them back again. But obviously, as I've said before, you need to make those changes to your document, not make them directly in Recite. Okay, so what we'll do here is I'll actually bring up the paper and we will attempt to look at it side by side, and I will show you actually fixing those. So we've got it side by side. I'll make this one slightly bigger so that we can see what we're doing. Okay, so the first one we need to move is the ICEDA one. We need to move that above Anders. So I'll just quickly scoot down to our references. And I'll take that one and I'll move it above our Anders reference. Okay. And then what we would do is we would then save it and we would re-upload. Now, you don't have to re-upload after every single edit, but you can just make a few changes, however many you're comfortable with, and then you re-upload. And because Recite's so quick, you'll just get the results then straight away. And you'll see those alphabetical order issues are now gone, and our number at the top has changed from the 14 before to the 10 because we've corrected those 4. Let's just quickly correct all the other alphabetical order issues, just because it's nice to tidy those up first. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through every correction. I just want to show you how the process would work if you were doing this, and the alphabetical ones are a nice way of doing that. So let's take the Bakerland reference here, and we'll move it up above the Blom reference, because that's what Recite is telling us we need to do. We'll pop that one in there. Just make sure we take out the extra line break that was in there. We'll save that. We'll just quickly go down and check there aren't any further ones, which I think there are. Okay, we've got to find our Dahan reference. And we're going to pop that. So this one says up 5. So we need to move that one. And we're going to pop that above our Demista reference there. Of our line break there. Save that. Okay, what we should see now is that having made those amends and saved it, if we re-upload, if we're lucky, all of our alphabetical order issues are now gone, the label's gone, and we've got none of those arrows throughout. So we cleaned it up a bit. So that's just an illustration of how you'd actually go about making the corrections. As I say, I won't go through and make all the others, but that's how essentially you would do these things. Now I'll just go through some of the other things that Recite points out. Okay, so now a really good thing here, the first issue we've got, number 3. So, sorry, I should have pointed out earlier. We've got some color coding, which enables us to see whether a particular issue, a particular reference has an issue. So we have the entries in green. Recite hasn't detected anything wrong with those. The entries in red, Recite has found something that you need to look at. So our first red one, we can see that actually for this one, we've got a big retraction button at the end. So Recite has actually checked this particular reference and found that it's actually listed in the Retraction Watch database, which we integrate with, and thinks that this article has been retracted. We can actually click the button to find out a bit more about that. So here we can see this is indeed a retracted source. So obviously you need to then make a decision as to whether you're going to continue to cite that work, whether you still think it's credible, And obviously, if you include it, APA says you need to obviously put a little note in there, which this author has, or you would remove it because you think, no, I don't want to use that source anymore. So Recite's very, very good at finding those and showing you those so that you can make the appropriate action for yourself. If we go down a bit further, our next one here, so our next one was a not found in one, but we'll come to that later. Here we have space expected. So this is a good example of where Recite is able to find those tiny little errors in your formatting that normally would take an eagle-eyed editor to find. So with Recite, it's a bit like having an extra pair of scholarly eyes looking over your work. So here we can see that the person has missed a space between the two B's in this person's initials. So we would adjust those. Let's scoot down a bit further. We can see various things that Recite is pointing out. So missing dots. You need to have a comma after the initials here. You're missing a space here. So the kind of things Recite points out are those things that are very, very difficult to find. So let's go down a bit further and I'll point out something quite interesting. With this reference, one thing worth pointing out here is kind of drawing your eye to these DOI buttons on the end. What we've got here is this Demista reference here doesn't have a DOI at all, but this DOI button on the end is orange. So where we have a DOI in the paper, they should be green. So you have these green buttons here, so the person has included a DOI, and it's green because Recite has then automatically looked up that DOI and made sure that DOI exists in the DOI database. It hasn't checked that that exactly matches that paper, but it checked that it is a valid DOI. This one doesn't have a DOI listed at all, but using our integration with Crossref, we've found a good match for this article in Crossref database, and we are able to then tell you that we've probably got a good indicator for that DOI. So we can either click the DOI button or the Crossref button to expand that section, and you'll see that we've matched this source in Crossref's database, and we're able to then pull back a DOI that you could include. So in case you're not familiar, Crossref is the world's largest registry of document object identifiers and metadata for the scholarly research community. So we integrate with that in order to pull in information from a kind of a reliable external source in order to help you fill in missing details and double check things really, really simply. While we're looking at those buttons as well, we also have Google Scholar buttons appear on every single hover as well, and that enables you to basically just search Google Scholar for that reference as well. Opens up in a new window. It's a really useful little feature. Let's go down a bit further. Oh, and one thing I was going to say was there other. So where we have grey DOIs, that basically means that the person hasn't included a DOI in that registry entry, but we weren't able to find a suggestion for that either. There's also red ones, which I'll show you a red one a bit further down. Those are really interesting. If we move down to, okay, 38, 41, and 42, you'll see these are green. I'm not pointing out an error here, I'm just pointing out something that is worth noting. 38, 41, and 42 have been annotated with this little org label at the top. That just means that Recite has detected these authors as an organizational author, which is just a nice sanity check for you to say, oh, okay, right, okay, I'm not referencing a normal person here. These are organizational authors. It's detected those correctly. And then if we move down to 49, this one is a very interesting one. So Recite here, this one's in red. This one's saying expecting ... following 19th author. So what it looks like here, it looks like the person is trying to use the 21 plus author rule in APA 7. So it's supposed to be doing 19 authors ... and then the final author. But actually it looks like they've done that wrong. And again, our Crossref integration can really help here. So we can click our button and basically it tells you this should be what it looks like. It should be tester m ... Hickey. So again, our cross-ref integration is really, really useful there in spotting. So kind of able to validate the suggestion that Recite is giving you. Recite is saying there should be a ... there, and cross-ref is agreeing with that. So that's great. Okay. If we scoot down towards the end, I'll show you this red DOI that I spoke about before. Here we have a red DOI. So what this is basically saying is the DOI link appears to be invalid. So the person has included a DOI for this entry, but actually the link, when it's followed, isn't correct. Now, if we click our cross-ref integration, we'll see there is the DOI there. And if you look at it, they look pretty similar. Actually, it seems to be that the person has, we're eagle-eyed, we can see that the person has randomly inserted a space between plant and sci. Therefore, the DOI is incorrect. But that could be any other typo. Recite will obviously point out if the DOI doesn't look to be valid. Okay, so that's basically a quick run through of all of the, well, most of the issues in this section. If we were reviewing this, we'd have our paper open side by side, like I showed initially. We'd then make the edits in the paper and upload every now and again to check issues are going away, but also check if Recite has found anything additional. If we go back up to the top, let me just talk quickly about the options bar at the top. There's some useful features in there. The first is that we can just choose to show only the issues if we like, get rid of all the green ones. The second allows us to actually get a nice different view on our reference list, so we can filter by particular years. So we can just click a particular year to see just the ones in that year. On that same note, we have this year graph icon here. If we click that, that shows a really, really great feature where we graph the distribution of your years and provide a really useful feature at the bottom that allows you to simply check, basically, if your school has any rules regarding that a certain percentage of your references need to be in a certain window, so in the last 5 years or 10 years, for example, Recite will tell you that straight away. So in this case, we're defaulting to 5 years here, and we're saying 25.56% of your references are in those last 5 years. But we can edit that, because if our school says 10 years, for example, straight away it changes to 78.2. So if you need to do that as part of your marking process, or your students need to do that when they're checking their own work, then that's a really simple thing to do in Recite. No adding up all the references and trying to work out what the percentage is. That's a simple thing to check. What that also shows is how Recite can give you a different view on your work. You're obviously used to seeing your document in a very linear fashion, so it enables you to see things quite differently. What we've also got here is a filter by author, so we can start typing in here. So if we said, oh, how many authors are Wilson? Oh, there's that one. How many are Davies? I can start to type Davies. Oh, there's all the ones that have got Davies in them. So just a useful little feature. We also got the ability to, once our cross-ref results have also been completed, so we're at 100% here, this is clickable, so we can get it to display all of the additional information from cross-ref and in one go, which is really great for sanity checking your data. Click it again to hide that one. Okay, so that pretty much covers the reference list. So what we would do is obviously we'd make all those changes that we'd need to do, and we'd re-upload. And then we'd have a look at the citations. So again, Recite is just pointing out issues in here, and I'll go through a few of them just to illustrate. So here we can see in our first one, we have an issue with the first section in here, where Recite is saying no references for year 2019 match these authors. So it's basically looked in your reference list and said there's no Ashman, Witzel et al. For 2019 or anything similar that it can point you at, so that's probably likely to be a reference that's missed completely. In the second one, here's a really good example of Recite being able to sanity check that your et als are correct. So here it's saying that this one looks ambiguous. You've said Burgess et al. 2022. There are actually more than one Burgess et al. 2022 in your reference list. So obviously you would need to work out which one you're actually referring to and use the correct disambiguation. So obviously for the first, you could disambiguate with an additional author. So you could do Burgess, Mesclau, de Breiz et al. Whereas for the second, there's not enough authors there to actually use a second author, because you couldn't do Burgess, Kano et al. Because there'd need to be at least 2 more authors after that. So you'd have to do it in full. So you'd have to do Burgess, Kano, and Parks. Our next issue is one where Recite is saying possible citation. Now, what that means is Recite is saying that this looks like it might be a citation, but I'm not entirely convinced. The format of it doesn't look entirely like it is a citation, but you might want to review it just in case it's something you've missed. So here we can see it's just a couple of years mentioned in the narrative, so we can just simply ignore those. There is an option at the top, show possible citations, which allows you to toggle those possible citations if you've kind of reviewed them and you don't want to see them anymore. There's also a feature at the end which allows you to ignore particular citations completely, but I won't go into that feature in depth today because that's a more of an advanced feature, there's a really good video on that in our YouTube channel. The next one down is another one that's marked as possible citation, but Recite's actually marked it as possible citation because this doesn't really look like a citation, but it doesn't look like a citation because of a formatting issue. So what we'll see here is that the person has missed the leading parenthesis. So Recite is saying year not in parenthesis, check the manual to ensure this usage is allowed. So it's actually a missing opening parenthesis there. The next one is a really good example of where Recite can be really eagle-eyed, and they're the kind of things that only editors tend to notice. So in the citation, we have Finesci and Lotero 2020, and in your reference list, Finesci and Loretto 2020. Really difficult thing to actually spot yourself. Recite obviously spots those kind of things very, very easily. The next one, similarly, it's a very similar example there. We've got Burnett and Burnett 2021, and in our reference list, we've got Burnett and Burnett 2020. Now, the interesting thing here is obviously one of those is going to be incorrect, but Recite, looking at the data within your paper, doesn't know which one is correct. And so it could be that Lotero is actually correct, it could be Loretto is correct. But obviously, because we've got our cross-ref integration, we can have an external viewpoint on that. And what we do here is when the cross-ref checks have finished, we actually annotate the individual citation here with the same icon that we would use in our reference list, which we can then click and we can pull through the data from cross-ref, and we can see that cross-ref agrees with our Loretto rather than our Lotero. So it's more than likely that Loretto is the correct one. If we want to double check, we could even click on the DOI link at the end. The Recite adds in automatically, and we could check in here whether this is correct. So here we see Loretto, which is what we're being told. Okay, so that's a really nice little feature. So our next one down again is a possible citation. Again, that's probably one that can simply be ignored. Number 8, we have warning, is this an et al? So really simple mistake for an author to make. We've gone Anders 2022 when actually the Anders reference in our reference list it should be an et al. This should be Anders et al. 2022 because there are more than one author in here, but it's an easy mistake for an author to make when they're writing a large paper. This one here, this is a good example of where Recite understands a lot of the APA rules that some people struggle with. So this is an 8.20 problem here. So possible ambiguity, when more than one reference has the same lead author surname, use correct author initials before the surname to avoid confusion. So in this paper, there are multiple lead authors with the surname of Zhang, so different people with the surname Zhang as lead authors, and APA rules say we should disambiguate there with leading initials. So in this case, we should be using Y Zhang et al. And we have, this paper has lots of those issues. So here we have this Lin et al. Again, it's saying you have multiple lead authors for Lin. So this one actually should be XL Lin et al. We have a few of those down through there. If we go down to this one, we have another really good example of where Recite is again checking your citations for ambiguity. So it's kind of saying here that you have multiple Demister et al.'s for 2022, so you need to disambiguate those. Otherwise, it's not correct. Okay, so that goes through most of the issues that we found in the citation list as well. So let me just quickly go up to the top. The options on this one are a lot more limited, but we have we can, by default, we show only the issues, but we can choose to show all of your citations if you want to see all of the citations that Recite has detected. You can choose to only show the actual red ones. So red are things with an actual issue. Orange are more of a style warning. So we can get rid of the style warnings initially if we just want to review the kind of the red ones first. And again, as I spoke about before, we can toggle the inclusion of the possible citations. As before, we'd fix all these issues in our original doc, and we'd re-upload to get an updated report. We're not trying to get to 0 issues though, just to a point where we understand why Recite is saying something, but we're happy it doesn't need further action. And there's probably another thing worth mentioning is when you hover over a citation, you do get these couple of options at the end. These hover options, I spoke about the ignore. There's a really good video on that on our YouTube channel. But there's the ability to see the citation in context, so we can click that and it will actually show you where that appears in your paper, just so you get a better idea of where that is in your paper. Which leads me on nicely to the third and final section that Recite gives you, which is the annotated article. Basically, this shows you all of your citations in the context of actually your written work, and it annotates them in the same way using the same color coding as we've introduced above. So we have green for things where we found an exact match, we have red things for where we can't find a match at all, and orange where there is a kind of an ambiguous match. If you hover over the citation, it will show you the citation. If you hover over the year, it will then show you what it matches. So it's a really nice interactive way of looking through your work. One really nice feature in here, you will notice that this south here is highlighted differently. If we hover over it, Recite says author found outside the scope of a citation. Now, interestingly, this paper has an author, PF South, that appears in the reference list. And because Recite has looked at your reference list and kind of understands the authors within your reference list, it's been able to then look at the whole of the body of your work and establish that because South is an author, and it's used here, not in the context of a citation, then this could be a missed citation completely. Obviously, if you're mentioning the surname of an author and it doesn't look like it's being cited, so there's no year corresponding to it at the end, then you could have missed a citation. So it's a really nice little feature that might catch a few things that you've missed. This one, oddly, I think this paper also has another example here where we say about green seaweeds, but also if we check the reference list, there is actually an author called P. Green. Again, that's a really nice little feature, and we get to see everything in that context. Now, that's basically the 3 sections and how they all work. We do have a split screen feature at the top, which you can split things and you can see things in a different way. I won't go into detail about that, though. There's some really good videos, again, on our YouTube channel. So, yeah, I think that basically shows everything that Recite does. And hopefully you've got a really good understanding now of how it would help you both within your kind of research role, but also, as educators.